Hi there, this is Yehunaton, and had a pretty difficult week this week, and been pressed to do another video here. Aharon just had a eureka moment this week, and we're definitely starting to get into some meat here, and the videos are starting to get more professional. We're going to keep treading here. This is a subject been holding back on. There's been many things we've been talking about, and it's interesting how these videos are slowly showing these spiritual forces, right? These dark forces that have protruded into our culture and have influenced us to do certain things that are not necessarily good for us, or keeping us on the path to our true destiny. Some of these things have been very offensive, but they're important to look at, because when you go towards the truth and when you go towards the Father, right, you learn of who, right? To know, Jedi comes from the word to know the Father. You learn who He is, but you also learn who He isn't. And it's interesting how people will believe the Father is this or part of this, and when you start to separate the truth from the error, the mixture, right, that has taken place in our world, you see the dangers, and you see the spiritual impartations that have the vices that have slowly taken us down paths that are not necessarily good for us, our family, or the future generations. And some of the things we've been talking about, there's so many different forces. Remember, we were speaking about dark forces. It's mentioned in Star Wars. Some of the things we've talked about, let's look at some of them. We've talked about Fortuna. That Fortuna, the spirit of fortune, right? We were talking about Gaud, G-A-U-D or G-A-W-D, the God of Fortune that's on the dollar bill, right? And we're seeing that influence in society of the casinos, of the gambling, right? Another thing we've been talking about is about Kirky, right? Or Kirky, Circe, the spirit that is really into the church system, right? Of the taking the sheep, or those who are on the ship to their destiny, right? Think Odysseus, that have been taken away from the path. The siren, right? Like in the time machine, the siren, the sirens that call the sheep and then fleece them, right? And then keeps them there so they can consistently feast on them. Okay. Then we were talking about Pharmacia, right? The drugs. We can look at the alcohol, the vices of alcohol. We were talking about Nike, okay, the spirit of Nike and sports and all in the arena and all that. And Aharon was talking about the possessions, right? We may think there's no idolatry today, but how many of us have a hard time letting go of certain possessions that keep us in a mentality? Okay, think about how it's interesting how people think we're beyond, what's happened thousands of years ago, that we're not into idols, we're not into these things. And believe it or not, there are many idols, there are many spiritual impartations. Look, we have superheroes, we have these influences in society that are controlling how we act and do things, and they are present in our culture. Okay, this is one of the spirits of the impartations that I've been holding back on, because it's very personal, and it's something that's going to offend every single person, especially Americans or those in the Western culture who believe in this sort of virtue, especially Europe and Australia, those kind of Canada, those sort of countries. because again, by knowing, it's a self-examination. Cleansing is a self-examination to know the Father. You can't just go up to the Father as is. It takes a purging process, right? Yada, right? To unlearn what you have learned, right? There is some truth in Star Wars that is being shown there, okay? There is an empire, right? The Imperials, okay? These are real things going in our culture today, but we have a hard time recognizing it and understanding what Star Wars was, right? It was a fictional story that was explaining certain truths, but using them in a certain way that would make it a little more hard to think. It was more entertainment based. But it's the same how you would see the Matrix, where it had a lot of, real concepts that we could understand today, but it was hidden in more fictional entertainment way. But when you start to unearth these things and you see these ideas in our culture, you start to realize these things, these ideas, these things are not new. They stem from an earlier time, and some of us have lost sight of where these truths have come from, where they started. And it's interesting how many of these truths start from the script, even though these truths have come from other sources. They stem from an earlier story, right? The hero's journey. What is the hero's journey? Moses, he is the Torah. It's the journey that we all must face. It is the script. And who are supposed to, how are we supposed to act? How are we supposed to fulfill our roles, right? Our destiny. That's what it's about. Our destiny. Moses had 3 stories, just like a trilogy, right? He started at this place and then you have his fall, right? And you have his part in Egypt, then you have his part in the wilderness where he's, with the sheep and stuff, and then you have the part where he's the Messiah figure. How many times have we seen this? You can even look at Dune, the 3 different books, or the parts that were in the story. Same situation. You can look at Mad Max. Hopefully we can talk about him a little bit more, of where he goes throughout the movies, right? You see this representation of the hero's journey. And what is this? This is a journey of which the chosen person must go through in order to cleanse it's a cleansing, it's a spiritual cleansing. It is something that is showing us what certain people need to do. And this message is not for anyone, but for the people who are supposed to know the Father. Jedidiah, right? Jedidiah, to know the Father is relationship, trust. Okay? For those, they are going to see the spiritual impartations. This one in this video, okay, is going to be about a very strong one in our Western culture, and this is something that has been ingrained and mixed with the scriptural father figure that we've learned about. And this is about a spirit called Libertas. Libertas, okay? When you see what Libertas represents and where you see where it came from, you see the source. It comes from Sirens. It comes from the Tower of Babel with Nimrod, and basically she was a prostitute. Okay, when you see the Statue of Liberty, you see where it came from. Okay, it's a cultish. You see the rays coming out of her hat, of her crown, the rays of the sun. Okay, this is sun worship. This occult worship comes from the Masons. Okay, again, Disney has a Masonic connection here. When you see they have that background, this very much ties everything together. When you see the Statue of Liberty came from the Masons as well, a Masonic group in France, right? Remember, they had a revolution just like the American Revolution, and they believed in liberty, right? Liberté, okay? And what they were going through is they had the picture, right, of the prostitute, of the exposed prostitute who is allowed to think and do, right, the liberation, right, the liberation and freedom to do what one believes and wants to do. Okay, when you look at the scriptures, you see what that spirit is. When you see what the Father says, what the prostitute is, when you look at the references in the scriptures when it talks about the prostitute, okay, you see what does the Statue of Liberty have, right? It had a torch. It has a torch, right? The torch, the light that leads the world. But what it originally had was a cauldron. And when you look at Revelation, right, okay, it should start to make sense when the prostitute has the bitter drink, okay? That's something that should start to make you question certain things of when people are under the spirit of Libertas, personal freedom. And again, I'm not trying to go, I believe people have a right by Yah to choose which direction they should go. But when you see people who have been oppressed, right, leaving a very oppressive group, a very oppressive state, and then leaving that, and we're told, right, the pilgrims, you have the Puritans who were attempting to leave to be able to worship and read the scriptures, right, and to follow their father, right? To follow. That's the whole point of why Abraham moved their land, and then why Moses moved the children of Israel so they could worship, right? It's the same idea. It's the hero's journey, okay? It's the same thing here going on. But what happened is you have these other influences coming in that bring this idea of liberty, right? Libertas, the Enlightenment, and this was very heavily influenced by the Masons. The Masonic connection here is very much into this. And when you realize people are dying, okay, they're dying in battle, they really believe in the spirit. And okay, just recently saw a video that really led me to do this video for you. Is when watching a video and they're playing in the background, right, glory, glory, hallelujah, right, hallelujah, hallelujah, praise be to Yah, or praise be to the Father. Yah, it's, again, this word is not just something coming out of my hat here. This Yah means, we'll say it, Yah means I am. Okay, when Moses came to the burning bush, right, he said, I am what I am. Yah, okay, I am. He knows who he is. And for all those of us who try to put him into another category, right, like God, right, the Fortuna spirit, or the Libertas spirit, which we will go more into, when he says, look, who are you to say who I am and who I am not? I know who I am. Let me tell you who I am and follow this true Father. Okay? And this is what helped Moses realize what he needed to do. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back to the video, but you're seeing glory, glory, hallelujah, his truth is marching on, which is a great, message. But then you see the eagle, right? You see, when you realize, it's interesting how America is really into the eagle, and you realize the eagle is a creature that is able to stare at the sun, okay? It is a sun worship sort of item. You'll see nations have the eagle on top, as part of their flags, as part of their identity. And it's interesting how you realize what the eagle is. It is a vulture. It's not eagle's not necessarily an evil thing, okay? It's an unclean bird, okay? It is a vulture that eats the dead carcass, right? That cleans the crap out of the ground. In other words, the eagle serves a purpose and basically cleans the junk out, similar to would say like the shrimp or crawdads or the lobster. They clean the gook out off the ground, which is why this person would say do not eat things like pig and things like that, because these are unclean animals. You don't want this toxic stuff in your body, okay? Stay away from this stuff. When you see the purpose of what the eagle is, you see what it's supposed to do. It is a cleaning mechanism, and when you see the eagle in nature, what is it doing? Okay, these vultures are cleaning. They serve a purpose. They're cleaning. They're doing the dirty work, in other words. And you see this picture, right? We'll see this in other nations of where, especially when you look down in South America, you'll see the eagle, right, and associated to the serpent, right? You'll see the serpent in the bird's beak, right? When you look at serpent, okay, in the tie of serpent, and how people, especially like it said in the Amazon, those cultures in South America were really into the serpent worship, okay, and into some worship in that the serpent was known. That connection of the bird and the serpent is a very strong, iconic, symbol in especially in Western culture. Okay, and when you see that was the purpose, okay, of America, right? Nebuchadnezzar, right? These countries are there. Again, we're going to talk about this because this was brought up in the political video. Is the whole situation with the Skywalker family, right? The Skywalker family was put there in order to cleanse the universe, right? Similar to Doom, you have, right, Anakin Skywalker who cleanses. Okay, there were plenty of problems. It was just cleaning, right? Like the eagle, it's cleaning all that crap. All these misconceptions, all the whole corruption of the Jedi and the temple and the political structure, and brought it down to a clean slate, okay, to where it was able to start again. It's interesting how there's that idea is not new. It's, you have the whole situation with Noah and the flood, right, where it's a cleansing process. You're constantly seeing this cleansing process, and right at the end of times you have the cleansing process. Okay, this is a cleaning, going back to the Father to get all that other stuff out of the way, right? Yoda had to leave, he had to be humbled, right? When he faced Darth Sidious, he had to be humbled, right? Even him, he was too full of himself, had to be humbled and live a modest, right, humble life in order to see the truth, right, and to help, right, to help Skywalker to do what he needed to do because it was needed to be done. Okay, these are things that we have to look at. And the more we go towards the Father, the more these sort of things are going to be noticed. Okay, when we see Libertas, when we see the eagle, when we see people who are dying, okay, for the Spirit, just like Gaud, Gawd for Fortuna, people are really getting into this vice. People will go into Pharmacia, they'll go into drugs, they will die for these things because they believe in them. But what does the script say we should be focused on? The Father. Again, it's all about the Father, and it's interesting. Again, we'll say this one more time, at least one more time. The Father, finding the Father, going to the Father, right, is a very prominent motif in Star Wars. It's something where you're constantly seeing this loss of the Father figure, and attempting, right, in each of the trilogies, the loss of the Father figure. You have Anakin Skywalker, you have Luke Skywalker, and you have Rey, which we'll see who she's from. But it was interesting how Aharon mentioned this, and don't really want to get into episode 7 too much, but how he started to see, and he's absolutely right, and this is a Masonic connection, which it was telling him the Masons are really into sun worship, right? He started to notice concepts of light, right? The rays of the sun, right? The rays of Libertas, right? Again, think connection here, connection.
Begin charging the weapon.
Yes, sir. Weapon charging.
Remember, when the sun is gone, that weapon will be ready to fire. But as long as there's light, we got a chance.
The whole situation with the Force, which is part of what Aharon's finally understanding right now, is that the whole concept of the Force, as it's seen in Star Wars, is basically the culmination of these dark forces, right? That have a mixture, right? Libertas might look good, okay? Personal liberty sounds great, okay? But when you see the state, right, using that to manipulate people, okay? You see the good and the evil. Remember, the knowledge of good and evil, then to know, right? To know right? What did the serpent say to Eve? When you eat of this tree, you will know good from evil, and you will be as gods. Okay? This is not saying to know is evil. It is what you are knowing. Are you going against the Father and doing it your way, your personal attainment towards freedom to do what you wish, right? Libertas maybe? Okay, let's look at the true path to know. Okay, again, to know. Yada, Jedidiah, Yada, okay? To know the Father. It's not an individual freedom to choose what thou wishes, okay? And this is really what we're starting to see in American culture. But was that the original idea? Was that why the Pilgrims left what they... Look, it was to serve the Father, okay? To know the Father. It's not a choice. It is to obey. It's not independence. It's reliance. It is humility, to kneel down, to be a servant, not to just do what one wills. That's the thing you're starting to see, right? do what thou wilt. You know, Aleister Crowley and his belief in Satanism, that was one of his most important ideas, his quote, do as thou wilt. Okay? Is that the direction we're going? Yes. Many people are caught up in this thing that we can do everything we want. And there's plenty of entertainments to keep us doing what we think we want to do when we're being manipulated to do these things to keep us away from what we really should be doing, our true destiny. Okay? And that is to serve a purpose, serve a function, right? To have the spiritual mantle, and to help those who need shelter from the storm, to help those who are called, to help those in need who really need it. It's about accepting the truth of the Father, and to kneel and to be knighted, and to be a servant to help those in need. That is not independence, personal liberty, libertas. That is reliance towards the Father, not to man. And again, it was great, okay, that we should leave or not support oppressive governments. But when we have a nation who has left an oppressive government to become a much more oppressive government than even they were, shows you what this spirit has done to us. This is an important message and a very hard one to speak about because it offends everyone. This is going to hurt. This is not going to make us very popular, and it's going to make people want to hate us really bad, okay? But this is the truth. Not something this person necessarily wants to believe. If this person went on just personal wants and stuff, would say there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with America. We are the light of the world, right? What is this? They'll quote the scriptures, but what is the real reference of light? Okay? Remember, Satan is referred to as the light bearer, the covering cherub, right? He covereth, and had the reflection, okay, but fell due to his pride. This world, not just this nation, but the world has been caught up into this system and has been influenced to go towards a false light. Okay, a reflection that has been perverted, that has misdirected us towards where we need to go. It's the siren, right? The Kirky spirit calling us away from what we should be doing, following the ship, right? The mass on the ship, to keep us going forward. Okay, this ship, we have to understand this ship we are going on. Okay, this path. Okay, who is the master and who is the servant? Many of us want to be masters, right? You have people playing Pokemon out there who wants to be the Pokemon master. Who you have people into, Harry Potter who want to be that master, right? This master of that or that. Look, it's about surrender, yada, okay? But given all the problems with Star Wars, this is something I definitely like about him. And this is something mentioned in the Jedi Creed website. He wasn't afraid to look like a fool. Remember when he went to Skywalker, right? Acting in a way to make him look like just this outside creature, just part of the planet Dagobah, right? And it was to help Luke right? Help Luke get accustomed to he was helping him, okay? It wasn't trying to speak a lie to him, it was trying to help him. Look, he wasn't there to make himself this great master, right? Skywalker was looking for this great Jedi master, right? This grand master. But what was Yoda, okay? He realized who he was, that he had fallen. He realized he had to live a humble life, just like Obi-Wan, right? And by doing that, was able to understand his purpose into helping Skywalker do what he needed to do. The issue is, and this is again something that Aharon mentioned when he started to watch the Star Wars and had his eureka moment, he started to realize, what is the Force, okay? What is the Force that we know? When you start to realize what the Force, not the source, the Force, not the Father, but the Force is, it is basically man's a culmination of these spirits, these forces, right, that have good and evil, okay? Libertas may sound good, right? Personal freedom to do as thou wilt. It has a great taste, right? Okay? It has great effects in the beginning, right? Pharmacia, the alcohol, right? Having these possessions gives you a great high, right? Going in these entertainments, the sports gives you a great high, okay? But what happens afterwards? There is a side effect. There is the rat poison. That's part of the 95 or whatever % good food, but it's that little bit of food that gets you. It's the clincher, okay? It is basically that hook in your jaw that pulls you back, okay? After you eat the good food, you paid the price. And you see, these spirits have been amalgamated. And we have created ourselves this force that human beings can tap into and do whatever they want, right? They can do these fancy tricks and all those sort of things. But when you see what spirits are influencing, right, these people, okay, what are they doing, okay? We have examples of telekinesis. Remember when Aharon spoke in our way earlier video about telekinesis and levitation, and we can also look at the whole situation with Force Ghost and the lightning and stuff. We have to understand there are examples of these in history, but what kind of spiritual impartation, again, were they under when they do levitation? Okay, what sort of spiritualism do they use? What forces do they call upon to do these things? When you realize these forces are not as powerful as they seem. Okay, when you see that they have a side effect, the usury. Look to the Father who has the true power, the true source, and you're doing, when you are possessed by the Father, not by these vices, not by these spirits, but by the true Father, the true Ruach that comes in you and takes over your being.
Son, thy sins be forgiven thee.
Why does this man thus speak blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God only?
Why reason ye these things in your hearts? Whether is it easier to say to the sick of the palsy, thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, arise, and take up thy bed and walk? but that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. I say unto thee, arise, and take up thy bed, and go thy way into thine house.
Things that can be done that are beyond these other things. When you see the imitation, when you see what Star Wars is, it is simply a lesson. It is, this person knows why this is so big right now, okay? The manipulation of using these forces. But when you see the true source of light, not the false light, but the true sense of light. Remember, we were talking about Lucas, right? Light bearer, right? Lu, okay? Again, when you see this is the true light, the Father is the true light, there are things that you will do that you can't even possibly imagine. It's not about vain imaginations anymore. It's not about, I wish I was a Jedi Master who could do all these wonderful things like a superhero and stuff. Look, when you go out there and you do things, when you follow the Father and are a servant and you represent Him, He will protect His name. And He will give you what you need to do what needs to be done. He'll give you, you will do greater, right? What did Yeshua say, Jesus say? You will do even greater things than I have done for those who follow the will of the Father and do according to His purpose. This is a very difficult video, and it's really good that this video is coming up while Aaron had his moment, and these videos are starting to get a bit more professional. He posted recently at Temple of the Jedi Order, and did not tell him to do that. He needed to experience this, and it was interesting to see the responses that came after it. It's the same things that I saw during when administrating Jedi. It's interesting how the same perspectives will come up. Yet the learning it's just the stagnation. People are into their vain imaginations of what they want to obtain. And are they interested in truth, or are they interested in knowledge in order to obtain mastery, Godhood? Okay. This is something that is touching Aharon right now, and it needs to, this is a message we need to keep going forward with, because there are people who need to see what the true Jedi are, and that these are people who do not attempt to know good and evil, right? Light and dark. Remember Sidious, light and dark. But for those who wish to know the Father and eat the fruit from the tree of life. We need this. And that's why this message is important at this time. We need to keep going forward. And even though it's getting harder and harder to talk about these things, there are people who are ready to make these stands, right? To stand in the face of adversity. When our country, especially like America, when you're seeing these countries go in debt, right? These Western countries, you're seeing these countries fall into the lures into the depressions that man has created for them. When they start to lose focus of the beacon, right? Like the ship and the lighthouse, the beacon of light, the moon, or think of the light in the lighthouse. When a person has lost focus of that light, where will that ship head towards? Rocky cliffs, maybe? The ditch, okay? Be careful. Stay focused on the true light. That's what we need to do. And it's, for some of us, it's not a choice. It's a command to obey, to serve, and to help those who need shelter from the storm.